So I think this one's first directed to the DAFNI team. What kind of help and support could be expected from DAFNI when developing models using the platform? Brian, I don't know if you want to come in first. And
so, so it depends what you mean. What we can do, what we would do is help you make the model DAFNI ready. That's how I might put it. We appreciate the Dockerization process maybe will be new to people, and it is not, it's not straightforward necessarily. It is something that's becoming more widely known, and particularly in software engineers, it's caused a lot of excitement over the last 5 to 10 years. So people are becoming gradually more familiar with it, but many people probably aren't. So we certainly can offer help with the Dockerization process, and there are tutorials and videos on that as well. And we've done some work on sort of integration with GitHub to make it a bit easier. So that we can also help with advice on sort of any adaptations or to make it work more easily in our workflows. I mean, we said we should try and do that, and make it as easy as possible for people to do that. We would also advise on how to access the data in our system, in the DAFNI system. Well, we're not, on the other hand, we're not we can't help you build the model itself. I mean, that is up to the designer and the researcher on that model itself. We're not the coders of the models themselves. What we can do is help people get it on the platform and make work effectively on the platform. And as I think it's been mentioned several times, if there are special requirements around sort of data or computational scaling, for example, we can help with some of those things. But so what we would help with is getting it to run effectively on the platform rather than building the model itself in the first place.
Okay, and I'm going to jump to another question because it's very linked to that one. Does the would the DAFNI team provide technical support? Is it free?
As part of our business model and going forward in the future, yeah, we certainly want to be in a situation for sort of research users who don't require sort of extra help on some of the things I've mentioned because of particular requirements. Yes, I think that is our intention, that we would be. We want to be in that kind of place where it kind of is part of our sustainability discussions in the future. We certainly know what is our intention.
Probably also worth mentioning there that for the previous two questions, we have a fairly active Slack channel with our users where people can ask for help and get help from not only the DAFNI team, but users who have already done this stuff like Just and Christian. So,
Okay. And data set versus models, what is the difference? Who'd like to tackle that one?
It'd be possible to clarify what the question is getting to. Whoever originally uploaded it, perhaps.
Maybe we could come back to that one if someone could add in some extra text onto the Slido. That would be great. Okay, let's move on from that one for the moment then, and we'll come back to it. Hopefully we can have some more clarification. And could researchers make suggestions about types of data to put on the platform when working on models that require the data? So I guess this is suggesting to us maybe of bringing data in, or for them to actually put data on, which I think Bethan's probably already covered.
Yeah, I think we have covered this quite a bit. Yes, I mean, so the short answer is yes. I mean, you can either provide data yourself and upload it yourself and release it, or if you want us, to access or provide sort of general access to sort of widely useful data sets that you are interested in, yeah, point us towards it, and we'll see about acquiring it or putting it on the platform.
Is it worth, Brian, at this stage mentioning about linked data or how we might link to maybe other data centers?
Yeah, something we are looking into quite actively is with other data repositories. We may not want to just copy their data repository without, a priori. We may well want to have a link to their catalogs and sort of pull data down on demand if we need it, but make it sort of, i.e., if you want to build data from I don't know, the energy research data or the CEDAR environmental catalog, we can provide a mechanism to link it and pull it down on needed. So that's the sort of thing we're also exploring.
Okay. We can actually come back to that question now. I think we've had some more clarification. Data sets versus models. I'm going to jump to that question. So we started talking about data sets and later on about models. Are data sets a subset of models? I guess this might be some outputs from models that it might be asking about that ends up being a data set.
I guess it's a point of view question. I mean, we have got a fairly clear sort of categorization between these things. I mean, a data is a model is something you can execute and run. So it's sort of essentially coded. So that there are distinct categories. Data is information about state of the world, which might be an output of a model or view of a model, and we would see them as somewhat distinct.
Okay. Marcus, can I bring you in at this stage? There's a question directed to you there. How have you embedded the behavioural change following the introduction of EV or other decarbonising technologies?
Yes, I mean, the model doesn't explicitly do that. It's a cross-sectional model calibrated on a particular base year. So certainly as it stands, to take into account that sort of change would need the model to be recalibrated to take account of how behaviour might have changed. So yeah.
Okay, and thanks for the feedback on the next one. That's really nice to see. We mentioned earlier about how you could register for access to the platform. So at the moment, you have to request access, and Rocio will put the email address again up in the chat, but it's support@dafni.ac.uk, and we can issue you then with a login for DAFNI. As Brian described earlier on, if you can actually tell us what you'd like to use the platform for, that would be really useful. I don't know if the team want to add anything more there about GDPR issues or how it might be handled in future, login wise.
I would just say, the reason why we're not here's a place you can just register, it is because we're a development system. We've not a production platform. We're not not being today a generally open service. So we brought on a relatively small number of users to do pilots and sort of use cases, and that's gradually growing. That we anticipate that will change and will be more generally available. There'll still be a registration system and an approval system, I think, for users. It won't be kind of just sign up like a don't know, a sort of Google Docs page or something, Google account, it would be, we want to make sure that users on the system are within the scope of our user community, which would be registered, which would generally be researchers working in the sort of fields we've been discussing today. But we expect to be relatively, once that is set up, we expect to be relatively open for those, open for anyone working in those fields, having a good, wanting to use the system. So I expect that will change.
Okay, and are we planning to work with the Department for Transport to get their data onto the platform?
We've had a number of discussions. Marion,
So we've talked
DOT. We've spoken to other
Yeah.
transport organisations.
Yeah, we've talked to DFT, and we certainly talked to them about their own transport model. They are very obviously keen to work with us, and the conversations are ongoing. We probably need to revisit them now that we actually will shortly be launching the platform. But they've been to a number of events. They have taken part in a number of conversations. So I think they're keeping a watchful eye on us. I think we are sparking some interest for them, is what I would say.
I mean, we've had a number of conversations with a number of transport organisations, Transport for London, Highways England. We've having conversations with them. I think, previously we've been relatively mature, so they've been, so it's more or less keeping channels open. But I think, now we're getting towards that level of maturity. I think we'll be looking to get more of that data on the platform.
And Brian, I think this is probably maybe because you mentioned Energy Data Centre earlier
on. I mentioned the there's, as part of a EPSRC funded program called the UK Energy Research Centre, there is the EPSRC's Energy Data Centre, which if you do a search, you'll be able to find, which have quite a lot of data from broadly across the energy sector, particularly energy sector, and a lot of energy research data, which is available for UK researchers.
Okay, maybe we'll try and add the link to the chat in a minute if Rocio can help me with that. Difficult to do that when you're sharing screens. And then Christian, I've got a question for you regarding data pre-processing. Could you share more on the Outlier detection, smoothing, etc.?
Yeah, I could say a bit more about that. So the first thing that I would like to say here is that the 4 blocks, if you want, from the pre-processing stage, they're still, as the model is being developed, they're in their earlier stages, let's say, and as the more users will get on DAFNI, and then with progress with the model, we'll add more advanced techniques. For example, in the outlier detection, what we do is we actually use the same kind of strategy as in the prediction. So in the slide that I had with the forecasting model, we had that step that would identify patterns in the past that are similar to what happened today. So for the outlier detection, we do something very similar, which is we sort the new data that came based on the traffic pattern that we identified for that day. And then we sort them from like the most common ones, let's say the normal pattern without any congestion, until and at the tail you'll have like more weird patterns. And you could basically set up a threshold towards the tail of this sorting and delete things that are very rare and that have not been seen so far on the platform, or that have constant values throughout the day and so on. It's still very much not fully automated at the moment. Like I said, there is this threshold that depends on the patterns that you've seen in the past, so it still needs to be checked by a person to see if the pattern makes sense, or if it's something that you would not expect to see from a traffic data sensor. But as we progress, yeah, we'd add more advanced stuff in those blocks. Yeah.
Thank you. And what are the incentives for organizations like DFT to put their data on your platform compared to maintaining their own databases?
I'll answer that. So I think, yeah, where to start? We don't see ourselves as in many circumstances, or at least the moment, holding sort of master copy of the data. I.e., this is, if you follow the logic of this question, it's, the DFT don't maintain their own database; they just use DAFNI. We wouldn't see that. We would see that the DFT would maintain their own data, and the master copy of the data would be at DFT, or the I mentioned the Energy Research Data Center earlier, that they would hold the master copies of those data sets, and we would pull them onto the platform to make them available to our modelers. So why people would make data available on our platform would be so they can be accessed by the models and they can be run on the models, and then have that record of that they've been processed by the models, or results have been generated from those data sets using the models on the platform. So I mean, that might change over time. There might be data sets that we do hold the master copy, particularly if they are outputs of models, model runs. But at the moment, we wouldn't expect an organization like DFT to stop maintaining their own database. What we would do is come to agreement to access their data so we can run models over it. And that's our real advantage, that we can run models and we can combine models together.
And Joost, I think one last question for you. Joost, MatSim requires continuous running of multiple hours. How computational intensive is your model? Is there any benefit in the integration with DAFNI?
Yeah, of course, as I mentioned in my conclusion. So I guess the person asking a question must know the MatSim model, but you've got this parameter in the MatSim, which is a number of iterations, and you need to run enough iteration to reach equilibrium. So it needs that, it's very, very computational intensive. Because depending on the number of core you have, one iteration can take up to 15 minutes, and then if you want a 100 iteration, it can take days to run. For example, for London, it took me 5 days to run it. So one big advantage of integrating into DAFNI is that you can use the parallel cores, so you can run parallel processing. So I parameterize this into in the Docker image for the DAFNI platform, and we can specify the number of core required, and then you parallelize some tasks in the MatSim model, and you gain a lot of time. And then you can also parallelize between the different urban areas. So because you can run several workflows in parallel, so you've got jobs in parallel for different urban areas, and then inside each job you've got also parallel processing. So in that sense, definitely is a huge advantage. Yeah.
Thanks, Joost. And then some, not necessarily a question, but some really nice feedback. Thank you for putting that feedback up on the slider, Miriam. Really appreciate it. Oh, another one for Joost. I think this will have to be our last one because we're supposed to be finishing. If the main benefit is computational power, how does DAFNI compare to UCL's own computational resources?
So it's not the only benefit also, and I also mentioned this in my presentation. The core of the integration is a workflow system, and actually the full 4-step model is built with the DAFNI workflow system. So that's another crucial advantage. And then in terms of comparing quantitatively to UCL resources, I don't know all the resources of the DAFNI, but I know they've got huge stuff. And yeah, I don't know also all the specs of the UCL cluster. I guess it compares, but it's totally different because in DAFNI it's integrated and you've got this workflow system and directly distributed into the computational infrastructure. So it's really having both. Because if I would like to run this on the UCL cluster, I would have to do the script by hand, and so literally to write the workflow system by hand. So it's both the Computational Power and the integration.
I can in as well there, Marion. So I'm using Samsung's high computing facilities to run the transport model in Nismod, which takes about between 30 and 45 minutes. And I understand that the transport model on DAFNI will take around the same time. But the benefits I'm hoping to get when I'm starting to use DAFNI is this ability to manipulate the different model runs quite easily without having to go into the basic code, which you currently have to do. It reduces that kind of level of manual interaction. So maybe I'll feedback on that at a later date.
Thank you, everyone. I'm so sorry. We're going to have to end it there, and some fantastic conversations and fantastic questions today. So thank you to everyone who's joined us. Thank you so much to all our speakers. We will be sharing the outputs of these videos on our website. We'll get around to doing that as soon as we possibly can edit the Zoom video. We're just sharing on the screen here how you can get in contact with us. We would really welcome further conversations. We're hoping this won't be the end of our conversations with University Transport Study Group. If you're interested in developing partnerships or including us in proposals, we would welcome a further conversation with you. We'll be sending you some feedback form, and also you're welcome to join kind of our mailing list, to join our regular newsletter. We have one newsletter a month. We promise not to bombard you with huge amounts of information, but at least we'll give you a newsletter every month. And I think that's finally just to say thank you to Adrian for helping us organize this today, and everyone who took part.